Guo Wei, with calloused hands and decades of quiet wisdom in his weathered face, walks into the gleaming Sun-Grow agricultural equipment factory, unaware that he's about to face ridicule and disrespect from the very employees who owe their livelihoods to his family. But when they discover who he truly is, the father of Zhang Min, the billionaire CEO who built the company from nothing, everything changes in an instant. A simple man will soon teach them a lesson about respect and humility that will cost some of them everything they've worked for. Want to see how their world comes crashing down? Watch until the end to witness the true power of kindness in the face of arrogance. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The summer heat beat down mercilessly as Guo Wei made his way toward the massive industrial complex that dominated the outskirts of Hangzhou. His faded blue workshirt clung to his back, dampened by sweat from the 2-mile walk from the bus stop. He could have called for a car. His son had offered many times, but Guo preferred to make his own way, just as he had done for the 73 years of his life. His hands, dark and gnarled like ancient tree roots, clutched a simple cloth, a bag containing his lunch, rice, vegetables from his own garden, and a thermos of tea. Those hands had tilled soil, planted rice, and raised a family through droughts and floods alike. The deep creases in his sun-darkened face mapped a lifetime of working the land, of waking before dawn and finishing after sunset. Guo paused at the imposing gate of the Sun-Grow agricultural equipment factory, taking in the sleek, modern architecture with its gleaming glass facade. 20 years ago, this had been nothing but empty fields much like the ones he still tended every day. Now it was the headquarters of Asia's fastest-growing agricultural technology company, employing over 3,000 people. His son, Zhang Min, had built all of this from the ground up. The boy had always been clever, always tinkering with tools and machines when he should have been helping with the harvest. Guo had worried about his son's future. What farmer's son had time for dreams when there was work to be done? But Zhang had proved him wrong in the most spectacular way. As he approached the security checkpoint, Guo straightened his posture slightly. He wasn't here to cause trouble or to announce himself. Zhang had asked him to visit, to observe how the factory operated when the employees didn't know they were being watched by management. "Just walk around, father," Zhang had said. "See how they treat ordinary people. See if they remember why we built this company in the first place." The young security guard at the gate looked up from his phone, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of the elderly farmer standing before him. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone suggesting that Guo had clearly taken a wrong turn somewhere. "I am here to see the factory," Guo replied simply, his voice carrying the distinctive rural accent of the countryside. The guard frowned. "Do you have an appointment? A visitor's pass? Are you expected?" Guo shook his head. "My son said I could visit." This brought a smirk to the guard's face. "Your son? And who might that be?" For a moment, Guo considered telling the truth. It would be so easy to say Zhang Min, the founder and CEO, and watch the young man's expression change. But that wasn't the purpose of today's visit. Zhang wanted to know how his employees behaved when they thought no one important was watching. "He works in assembly," Guo lied, the words feeling strange on his tongue. "He said I could see where he works." The guard sighed dramatically and picked up his phone. "Name, Guo Wei." After a brief call, the guard printed a visitor's badge with clear reluctance. "Wear this at all times. Don't touch anything. Stay with your guide." He gestured toward a young woman approaching from the main building. "Lin will show you around. Try not to waste too much of her time." As Guo clipped the badge to his shirt, he observed the young woman walking toward him. Lin couldn't have been more than 25, dressed in the company's sleek grey uniform, with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her face was a careful mask of professional courtesy, but Guo could see the annoyance lurking behind her. "Smile. Welcome to Sungrow Agricultural Equipment, Mr. Guo," she said with practiced efficiency. "I understand you're here to see our assembly floor. I'll be your guide for the next 30 minutes. 30 minutes, Guo thought. His son had suggested. He'd take the full facility tour, which usually lasted 3 hours. Already, corners were being cut. As they walked toward the main building, Guo could feel Lin's impatience in her hurried stride. She was walking too quickly, forcing him to quicken his pace to keep up. Her commentary was minimal and rushed, pointing out buildings without explaining. "Their purpose. This is our main production facility," she said, as they approached the largest structure. "We produce over 200 different models of agricultural equipment. My son tells me good things about working here," Guo said, observing her reaction carefully. Lin didn't even look back as she replied, "We have over 3,000 employees. I'm sure it's fine." Inside the vast, climate-controlled main building, the contrast between the outside world and this temple of technology struck Guo immediately. Everything was immaculate. Polished concrete floors, organized workstations, the steady rhythm of machinery creating a symphony of modern manufacturing. They passed through the reception area, where well-dressed executives moved with purpose. Several of them glanced at Guo with undisguised curiosity, some even exchanging whispers behind their hands. He caught fragments of their conversations. Who let him in here? Probably some vendor from the countryside. Someone should tell him the farmer's market is in the other direction. Guo pretended not to hear, but each comment stung like a small cut. This company had been built to help farmers, people just like him. Yet the employees seemed to have forgotten that. Lin led him through a series of corridors, each more impressive than the last. The walls were lined with awards and photographs showing the company's history. Guo noticed with a small smile that his son had carefully removed any images that showed his own humble beginnings. "What exactly does your son do here?" Lin asked. Suddenly, her tone suggesting she doubted his story. "He helps build the machines," Guo replied truthfully. After all, Zhang had started as an inventor, creating the first prototype in their small barn back home. Lin made a sound that was almost a laugh. "I see. And you want to see where he works, because—" "A father should know his son's work," Guo said simply. This seemed to amuse Lin. "Well, the assembly floor isn't really meant for visitors, especially—" She paused, looking him up and down. "Especially those unfamiliar with modern manufacturing, but we'll make a quick stop." They approached a set of double doors marked, "Production Floor, Authorized Personnel Only." Lin swiped her badge and gestured for Guo to follow. The noise hit him first. The whir of machinery, the clang of metal, the beeping of automated systems. Then came the scale of it all, a vast open space filled with assembly lines, robotic arms and workers in matching uniforms moving with practiced precision. A tall man in a white shirt and tie approached them immediately, his face creased with annoyance. "Lin, what is this? We're in the middle of the quarterly production push. This is not the time for tours, especially for—" He glanced at Guo, not bothering to hide his disdain. "Director Huang, this is Mr. Guo. He says his son works in assembly," Lin explained, her tone making it clear she didn't believe it either. Director Huang looked Guo up and down with skeptical eyes. "Your son works here? What's his name?" Before Guo could answer, a loud crash came from somewhere on the production floor. Director Huang turned away immediately, barking orders and completely forgetting about Guo. Lin seemed relieved for the distraction. "Let's move on," she said, already turning to leave. "The assembly floor is clearly too busy today." As they walked away, Guo heard Director Huang muttering to another employee, "Where do these people come from? We're not running a tourist attraction for farmers." Guo felt his face flush with embarrassment, but he said nothing. His son's words echoed in his mind. "See how they treat ordinary people. See if they remember why we built this company in the first place. So far, the answer was painfully clear. Lin guided Guo away from the production floor, her pace even quicker now, as if eager to finish the tour as soon as possible. They entered a wide corridor lined with gleaming display cases. Inside each case sat an agricultural machine in miniature, perfect scale models of the company's most successful products. "This is our company's evolution," Lin explained, gesturing half-heartedly at the displays. Sungrow began with simple handheld tools and now produces fully automated harvesting systems that can do the work of 50 laborers. Guo stopped in front of one particular case. Inside was a small, hand-operated rice transplanter, the very first product his son had ever designed. Zhang had built the prototype in their family barn using scrap metal and parts from a broken-down tractor. Guo remembered how his son's hands had bled from the work, how he'd stayed up night after night, perfecting the design. "This one," Guo said softly, pointing to the model. "This one changed everything." Lin glanced at the display with disinterest. "That's just an old manual transplanter. We don't even make those anymore. They're completely obsolete." "But without this, there would be no Sungrow," Guo persisted, unable to keep the emotion from his voice. Lin checked her watch impatiently. "I suppose everyone has to start somewhere. Now, shall we continue? I have an important meeting in 20 minutes. As they walked, Guo noticed a large photograph on the wall, a group of farmers standing in a muddy field, smiling proudly next to a Sungrow harvester. The caption read, "Our purpose, empowering those who feed the world." The irony wasn't lost on him. Here was a company built to serve farmers, yet its employees seemed to look down on the very people they were meant to help. His son's vision was being corrupted by success, by people who had forgotten the company's humble beginnings. They passed the employee cafeteria, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking meticulously landscaped gardens. Inside, staff in crisp uniforms ate at sleek tables, while others lounged in comfortable seating areas with tablets and laptops. "Would you like to stop for water?" Lin asked, the first considerate gesture she'd made during the tour. "Yes, thank you," Guo replied. Genuinely grateful. The walk had been long, and the summer heat was unforgiving. As they entered the cafeteria, conversations quieted briefly as people turned to look at the strange visitor in their midst. Guo felt the weight of their stares. Curious, judgmental, dismissive, he kept his head high, following Lin to a water dispenser in the corner. "Here you are," she said, handing him a glass. "Please be quick. We still have several areas to cover." Guo took the water gratefully, his weathered hands wrapping around the cool glass. As he drank, he overheard a conversation from a nearby table. "Who's the old farmer?" a young man in a designer suit asked, not bothering to lower his voice. "Some visitor from the countryside," his companion replied. Lin got stuck giving him the tour. Poor girl. They laughed, the sound grating against Guo's ears. He finished his water in silence, returning the glass to Lin with a polite nod. As they continued through the complex, Lin's phone rang. She answered immediately, turning slightly away from Guo. "Yes, I understand." "No, I can't right now. I'm stuck with this tour." Some old man from the countryside. "Yes, I know the presentation is important." Guo pretended not to hear, but each dismissive word stung. He was some old man, an inconvenience, a burden to be endured rather than a guest to be welcomed. Lin ended her call with visible frustration. "I apologize, Mr. Guo, but I'm needed elsewhere. I'll have to find someone else to complete your tour." She flagged down a passing employee, a young man named Wei who looked barely out of college. "Wei, can you take over this tour? It's just a quick walk through the R&D department and then back to reception. Mr. Guo's son apparently works in assembly." Wei looked at Guo with undisguised reluctance. "But I have the quarterly reports to finish." "It won't take long," Lin insisted. Just show him around and then you can get back to work." Before Guo could say anything, Lin was gone, disappearing through a door marked "Staff Only." Wei sighed heavily, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Follow me," he said curtly. "R&D is this way." Wei made no attempt to hide his annoyance as they walked. His explanations were brief to the point of rudeness, and he walked so quickly that Guo had to struggle to keep up. The R&D department was impressive, a vast open space filled with engineers working on complex designs and prototypes, but Wei rushed him through so quickly that Guo barely had time to take it all in. "This is where we design the next generation of agricultural equipment," Wei explained, his tone suggesting he was reciting a memorized script. "Our engineers are working on machines that will increase farm productivity by up to 200%. Very impressive," Guo said genuinely. "My son would find this fascinating." Wei checked his phone, not even looking at Guo as he replied, "I'm sure." "Now, if you've seen enough," a loud voice interrupted him. "Wei, what are you doing here? The quarterly reports were due an hour ago." A stern-looking woman in her 40s approached them, her expression thunderous. This was Director May from Finance, though Guo had no way of knowing that. "Director May, I apologize," Wei stammered. "I was asked to cover this tour, and a tour now." Director May's eyes fell on Guo, her gaze sharp and assessing. "Who authorized this?" Lin from Public Relations brought him in. His son supposedly works in assembly. Director May looked at Guo with open skepticism. "Sir, I don't mean to be rude, but this is a busy workday. Our staff has deadlines to meet. Perhaps you could schedule a proper tour for another time." Guo met her gaze steadily. "My son asked me to visit today." Director May's patience was clearly wearing thin. "And who exactly is your son?" Again, Guo faced the temptation to reveal the truth. How easy it would be to watch their expressions change, to see the respect, fear even, replace the dismissiveness. But that wasn't why he was here. "He works with the machines," Guo said simply. Director May exchanged a glance with Wei, her expression making it clear she didn't believe him. "Wei, finish this tour as quickly as possible and then return to your desk. Those reports cannot wait." As Director May walked away, Guo heard her mutter to another employee, "Security needs to be more selective about who they let wander around here." Wei, now even more anxious to be done with the tour, began walking at an almost jogging pace. "Let's wrap this up. The testing facility is this way, and then we'll head back to reception." The testing facility was a cavernous space where machines were put through rigorous trials to ensure they could withstand the harshest farming conditions. Normally, visitors would be offered safety equipment and a detailed explanation of the testing procedures. Wei provided neither, simply gesturing vaguely at the machines as they passed. "These are prototypes being tested for durability and efficiency," he said, already moving toward the exit. "Any questions before we head back?" Guo stopped suddenly, his attention caught by a familiar machine in the corner. It was a new rice harvester, similar to one he'd seen demonstrated in his village last year. That machine had malfunctioned, damaging a significant portion of the crop before it could be repaired. "That harvester," Guo said, pointing. "The cutting height is wrong." We looked at him with surprise that quickly turned to condescension. "Excuse me?" "The cutting height," Guo repeated. "It's too low. It will damage the roots and make replanting difficult." Wei laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Sir, with all due respect, this harvester was designed by engineers with advanced degrees in agricultural technology. The cutting height is precisely calibrated for maximum efficiency." "I have farmed rice for 60 years, Guo said quietly. "The cutting height is wrong." Now Wei was visibly annoyed, his professional facade cracking. "Look, Mr. Guo, I appreciate that you have experience as a traditional farmer, but this machine was designed using advanced computer models and field tests. It's already been approved for production." Guo fell silent. There was no point arguing. with someone who had already decided he had nothing valuable to contribute, but he made a mental note to mention the harvester to his son. Zhang would understand the importance of proper cutting height. As they headed back toward the reception area, they passed a conference room with glass walls. Inside, a group of executives were gathered around a table deep in discussion. Among them was Director Huang from the production floor. Huang noticed them passing and frowned, excusing himself from the meeting. He stepped into the hallway, blocking their path. "Wei, why is this person still here?" Huang demanded, not even addressing Guo directly. "The tour should have been completed an hour ago." "I'm finishing it now, Director," Wei replied nervously. "We're heading back to reception." Huang turned to Guo, making no attempt to hide his irritation. "Sir, I don't know what you hope to accomplish by coming here today, but I think it's time for you to leave. This is a place of business, not a tourist attraction." The disrespect was blatant now, no longer hidden behind fake politeness. Guo felt a flash of anger, quickly suppressed. He had promised his son he would observe, not cause trouble. "I am just looking," Guo said, echoing the words from his son's instructions. "I wanted to see where my son works." Huang scoffed openly. "Your son? Right. Well, you've seen enough. Wei, escort him to the exit immediately." As Huang turned to go back to his meeting, he muttered just loud enough to be heard, "These farmers think they can walk in anywhere these days. Someone needs to remind them of their place." The words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. Wei looked uncomfortable, but said nothing, gesturing for Guo to follow him toward the exit. As they walked, Guo's silence was not from submission, but from growing certainty. His son had been right to send him here. Something had gone very wrong at Sungrow. The company built to serve farmers now seemed to despise them. Wei led Guo toward the main reception area, his pace brisk, as if eager to be rid of his unwanted responsibility. The building's sleek corridors seemed colder now, the polished surfaces reflecting Guo's weathered face back at him, a stark reminder of how out of place he appeared in this temple of modern technology. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with a group of employees gathered around a display case. Inside was a new prototype harvester, its metallic body gleaming under the recessed lighting. The employees, all young, all dressed in perfectly pressed business attire, were discussing technical specifications with animated enthusiasm. "Excuse us," Wei said, trying to navigate around the group. One of the men, tall, with an expensive watch and an air of authority, turned to look at them. This was Zhao Liang, the head of marketing and one of the company's most ambitious executives. His eyes narrowed as he took in Guo's simple appearance. "Wei, what is this?" Zhao asked, gesturing toward Guo with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Why is there a farmer wandering around our headquarters?" Wei shifted uncomfortably. "He's visiting. His son supposedly works in assembly." "Supposedly?" Zhao laughed, the sound sharp and unpleasant. "And security just let him in? Standards are slipping around here." Guo stood quietly, his dignity intact despite the humiliation burning in his chest. He had faced hardship all his life, droughts that threatened his crops, floods that nearly washed away his home, poverty that made every meal a precious resource. He could weather the storm of this man's disrespect. Zhao stepped closer, looking Guo up and down with undisguised contempt. "Sir, I don't mean to be rude, but this is a place of business, important business. We develop technology here that people like you benefit from. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable visiting the demonstration farm on the outskirts of the city. They have actual dirt there." The group laughed, their amusement at Guo's expense evident in their smirking faces. Wei looked away, clearly embarrassed but unwilling to intervene. "I know what you do here," Guo said quietly, his voice steady despite the anger rising within him. "I know exactly what Sungrow was built to do." Zhao raised an eyebrow, amused by Guo's response. "Oh, please enlighten us then. What was Sungrow built to do?" "To serve farmers," Guo replied simply. "To make their lives better, to respect the work they do." The smile faded from Zhao's face, replaced by a cold stare. "That's a charming perspective, but this is a business, not a charity. We're here to innovate and profit, not coddle farmers who can't adapt to modern methods." Guo felt something shift inside him, a quiet determination replacing his earlier patience. "My son would disagree." "Your son," Zhao scoffed. "Yes, your mysterious son who works in assembly. Well, tell him the world is changing. Traditional farming is dying, and Sungrow is helping to bury it. We're creating a future where efficiency matters more than sentiment." One of the younger employees in the group, a woman with kind eyes who had remained silent during the exchange, stepped forward slightly. "Mr. Zhao, perhaps we should get back to work," Zhao interrupted sharply. "Wei, escort our visitor to the exit. Now." Wei nodded quickly and took Guo's arm, trying to guide him away. But Guo stood firm, his eyes locked on Zhao's. "You have forgotten," Guo said, his voice quiet but firm. "You have forgotten who feeds you." Zhao's face hardened. "I haven't forgotten anything. I'm just not sentimental about it. Food is a commodity, farming is an industry, and Sungrow is at the forefront of making it more efficient. If traditional farmers can't keep up, that's not our problem." The cruelty in those words hung in the air, striking Guo like a physical blow. This was the company his son had built, with such hope and vision, now twisted into something unrecognizable by people who had lost sight of its purpose. Guo turned to leave, his heart heavy with disappointment. He had seen enough. Zhang needed to know what was happening here, how far his company had strayed from its founding principles. As Guo and Wei walked away, Zhao called after them, his voice carrying through the corridor, "And next time, try using the service entrance. There's less glass to smudge with those dirty hands." Laughter erupted from the group, the sound chasing Guo down the hallway like a cruel echo. Wei walked faster, his discomfort evident in his rigid posture. "I apologize for that," Wei mumbled, surprising Guo. "Mr. Zhao can be direct. He can be cruel," Guo corrected gently. "There is a difference." Wei said nothing, leading Guo through the maze of corridors toward the main reception area. The journey was silent, both men lost in their thoughts. Wei, troubled by his own complicity, Guo by the realization that his son's legacy was being corrupted. As they approached the reception desk, a commotion near the main entrance caught their attention. A sleek black car had pulled up outside, and employees were suddenly straightening their posture, adjusting their clothing, preparing for something, or someone, important. The glass doors slid open, and a man in his 40s entered, his presence commanding immediate respect. He wore a simple but perfectly tailored suit, his posture confident but not arrogant. This was Jiang Min, CEO of Sungrow and Guo's son. Wei froze, his eyes widening in recognition. "That's the CEO," he whispered. "He wasn't supposed to be here." And today, Guo watched his son with quiet pride. Jiang moved through the space with authority, greeting employees by name, his smile genuine, but his eyes sharp, missing nothing. This was the boy who had once worked alongside him in the fields, who had fallen asleep studying engineering textbooks by candlelight because he dreamed of a better future for farmers like his father. Jiang spotted Guo across the lobby, and for a moment, their eyes met. Jiang's expression didn't change. There was no recognition, no acknowledgement of their relationship. He had promised his father he would play along with the charade, allowing Guo to complete his observations without revealing his identity. But then, Jiang noticed something that made his carefully controlled expression falter. The exhaustion in his father's eyes, the slight droop of his shoulders, signs that only a son would recognize. Someone had hurt him. Zhang changed direction, walking purposefully toward Guo and Wei. Employees scattered before him, murmuring in surprise at his unexpected presence. Wei began to panic, his eyes darting between Guo and the approaching CEO. "Mr. Guo, perhaps we should—" "CEO Zhang," called a voice from behind them. Director Huang was hurrying across the lobby, his face a mask of ingratiating respect. "What an unexpected pleasure. Had we known you were coming today, we would have prepared a proper welcome." Zhang didn't slow his pace, his eyes still fixed on his father. Huang caught up with him, falling into step beside him. "Sir, we're making excellent progress on the new production line," Huang continued, oblivious to Zhang's focus. "In fact, I was just about to send you the quarterly report." "Who is that man?" Zhang interrupted, pointing directly at Guo. His voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent of steel that made everyone in earshot stand a little straighter. Huang glanced at Guo dismissively. "Him? Just a visitor. Someone's father from the countryside. I believe he's leaving now." "A visitor," Zhang repeated, his tone neutral but his eyes intense. "And how has he been treated during his visit?" The question hung in the air, loaded with unexpected weight. Huang hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "He's been given a standard tour," Huang replied carefully. "Nothing special. He claims his son works in assembly, but—" "Claims?" Zhang's voice was soft, but cut through Huang's words like a blade. "You doubt him?" Now Huang looked truly confused. "Well, sir, he's obviously just a farmer. We have certain standards for visitors, especially those touring sensitive areas like production and R&D. "Standards," Zhang echoed, the word heavy with meaning. "And what exactly are those standards, Director Huang? Do they include respect for every visitor, regardless of their appearance? Do they include remembering who SunGrow was built to serve?" A hush fell over the lobby as employees sensed the tension building. Wei took a small step back, trying to distance himself from what was clearly becoming a difficult situation. "Sir," Huang stammered, "I assure you, we maintain the highest standards of professionalism with all our visitors. But surely you understand that we must prioritize our time and resources for those who are truly relevant to our business." "Relevant," Zhang repeated, the word like ice. "And who decides what is relevant, Director Huang? Who decides who deserves respect in this company that I built?" The emphasis on "I" wasn't lost on anyone listening. Huang's face paled slightly as he realized he had miscalculated badly. "Of course, every visitor deserves basic courtesy," Huang backpedaled. "I simply meant that some visitors require more attention than others, based on their relationship to the company and their relationship to the company," Zhang finished for him, now standing directly in front of Guo. "Yes, that's precisely my point." Zhang turned to face the gathered employees, his voice carrying across the now silent lobby. "I'd like everyone's attention, please." The murmuring stopped instantly. Even the receptionist behind the desk stood up straighter, sensing that something significant was happening. "I founded SunGrow 20 years ago with a single purpose," Zhang began, his voice clear and powerful, "to serve farmers, to make their lives better, to honor the work they do feeding our nation. I built this company from nothing, starting with a single prototype I designed in my father's barn." Guo watched his son with quiet pride, remembering those early days, the failed attempts, the breakthroughs, the countless hours of work that had led to this moment. "Everything we have achieved," Zhang continued, "every innovation, every product, every yuan of profit comes from that original purpose. We exist because farmers exist. We succeed because they succeed. That is the foundation of SunGrow." Zhang turned to Guo, his expression softening slightly. "This man before you may look like just a farmer to your eyes. His hands may be calloused from decades of work. His clothes may be simple. But without men like him, none of us would be here." A ripple of uncomfortable recognition moved through the crowd. Some employees looked down, suddenly aware of their own prejudices. Others exchanged confused glances, sensing there was more to this speech than a general reminder about company values. In fact, Zhang said, his voice dropping slightly as if sharing a confidence, this particular farmer deserves your respect for another reason entirely. He placed a hand gently on Guo's shoulder, the gesture both protective and reverent. This is my father, Guo Wei. The words hung in the air like thunder after lightning. This is my father, Guo Wei. A stunned silence fell over the lobby. Director. Wang's mouth opened and closed wordlessly, his face draining of color. Wei, who had been trying to blend into the background, looked as though he might faint. Around them, employees exchanged shocked glances, the implications of what had just happened dawning on them one by one. Zhou Liang, who had followed the commotion to the lobby, stood frozen at the edge of the crowd. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by naked fear, as he realized exactly whose father he had just insulted. My father, Zhang continued, his voice steady but laced with controlled anger, came here today at my request, not as the father of the CEO, but as what he truly is, a farmer who has worked the land for over 60 years, a man who understands agriculture better than anyone in this building, including me. I asked him to visit anonymously to see how our company treats the very people we were founded to serve. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the assembled employees. Based on what I've observed and what my father has experienced today, I am deeply disappointed. The silence deepened, heavy with collective shame. No one dared speak or move. When I founded Sungrow, Zhang said, I did it in my father's barn, using tools he had saved for years to buy. Our first investors weren't venture capitalists or banks. They were farmers from our village who believed in the dream of making their lives better. Every yuan of profit this company has ever made began with their trust and my father's support. Guo stood quietly beside his son, his weathered face dignified despite the emotions swirling within him. He had never sought recognition or praise. His pride was in his son, not in his own status as the father of a successful businessman. I built this company on 3 principles, Zhang continued. Innovation, quality, and respect. Innovation to create better tools. Quality to ensure those tools never fail when farmers need them most. And respect. Respect for the people who feed our nation, who work from sunrise to sunset in conditions most of you cannot imagine. His voice hardened. Today, I've seen evidence of the first 2 principles. Our innovation is strong. Our quality control is excellent. But the 3rd principle, respect, seems to have been forgotten. Director Huang stepped forward, his face a mask of desperate contrition. Sir, had we known who Mr. Guo was, we would have— That's precisely the problem. Zhang cut him off sharply. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with dignity. My father deserved respect as a farmer, not just as my father. Every farmer who walks through those doors deserves the same respect you would show to me. Huang fell silent, properly chastised. Behind him, Lin had appeared, her earlier impatience replaced by mortification as she realized her career might hang in the balance. I didn't create Sungrow to become another soulless corporation that forgets its roots, Zhang said, addressing the entire gathering. I built it to honor those roots, to serve the farmers who serve us all. If we cannot do that with genuine respect, then we have failed regardless of our profit margins. He turned to Guo, switching from Mandarin to their local dialect, a language of home and family that most of the assembled employees wouldn't understand. Father, are you all right? Did they treat you very badly? Guo shook his head slightly. Nothing I couldn't handle. But they have forgotten, son. They have forgotten who they serve. Zhang nodded grimly, then turned back to address the crowd in Mandarin once more. My father reminds me that the purpose of today wasn't to catch people doing wrong, but to understand how we can do better. So let me be clear about what happens next. The employees stood at attention, awaiting their fate. First, we will be implementing a company-wide recommitment to our founding principles, with special emphasis on respect for the farming community. Every employee, from the newest hire to the most senior director, will spend 1 week per year working alongside the farmers who use our products. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the crowd. Zhang raised his hand for silence. Second, we will be restructuring our visitor protocols. Every visitor to this facility will be treated with the same level of respect and attention, regardless of their appearance or perceived status. The days of rushing unimportant guests through 30-minute tours while executives get 3-hour experiences are over. His gaze found Lin, who lowered her eyes in shame. Third, we will be establishing a Farmers Advisory Council that will have direct input into our product development process. No product will go to market without their approval and testing, and this council's first chairman will be Guo Wei. Guo looked up in surprise. This hadn't been part of their plan. My father has 60 years of farming experience, Zhang explained. He spotted a design flaw in our new rice harvester just by looking at it, a flaw our engineers missed despite their advanced degrees and computer models. We need his wisdom, and the wisdom of farmers like him, if we are to truly serve our purpose. Zhang's expression hardened as his eyes found Zhao Liang trying to slip away unnoticed at the edge of the crowd. Mr. Zhao, please join us. The marketing director froze, then turned slowly, his face a mask of dread as he approached. Mr. Zhao expressed some rather strong opinions about traditional farming earlier, Zhang said, his voice dangerously calm. He suggested that Sungrow is helping to bury traditional farming and that farmers who can't adapt should be left behind. He also suggested that my father use the service entrance next time, to avoid smudging our glass with his dirty hands. Gasps of shock echoed through the lobby. Even those who had witnessed the earlier encounter were stunned to hear the words repeated in front of the CEO. I was merely joking, sir, Zhao stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. A poor attempt at humor. I have the utmost respect for your father and for all farmers. Is that so? Zhang replied, his tone making it clear he didn't believe a word. Then you'll be delighted with your new assignment. Effective immediately, you'll be taking a 6-month leave from your marketing duties to serve as our first farm liaison officer. You'll be living in Longjing village, working alongside the rice farmers there, learning firsthand about their needs and challenges. The color drained from Zhao's face. Sir, I'm not sure I'm qualified for field work. My expertise is in marketing. And your expertise, Zhang interrupted coldly, needs to be expanded to include an understanding of the people who make our business possible. You'll report directly to the Farmers Advisory Council, directly to my father. Consider it an opportunity to gain a new perspective. Zhao looked as though he might protest further, but one glance at Zhang's unyielding expression told him it would be futile. He nodded stiffly and stepped back, his career aspirations crumbling visibly around him. Zhang turned to Director Huang next. As for you, Director Huang, your dismissive treatment of visitors ends today. You'll be joining our new customer experience team responsible for ensuring that every person who enters this building, farmer, investor, or job applicant, receives the same high level of respect and attention. Huang swallowed hard but nodded, knowing he had escaped relatively lightly compared to Zhao. Wei, Zhang continued, finding the young employee who had reluctantly guided Guo. You showed discomfort with how my father was treated, even if you didn't speak up. That suggests you still understand our company's values. I'd like you to help coordinate our new farmer engagement program. Can I count on you? Wei straightened, surprised to be singled out positively. Yes, sir, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Zhang nodded, then addressed the entire gathering once more. Let today be a reminder to all of us. SunGrow exists to serve farmers. Every innovation, every product, every yuan of profit comes from their needs and their trust in us. We will never forget that again." He turned to Guo, switching once more to their home dialect. "Father, would you like to say something to them?" Guo hesitated, unaccustomed to addressing large groups. But there was something he needed to say, something important that even his son might have forgotten. He stepped forward, his weathered face solemn but not unkind. When he spoke, his voice was clear and carried surprising strength. "I have been a farmer all my life," he began in Mandarin, his rural accent pronounced, but his words dignified. "I have known drought and flood, success and failure. I have seen technology change farming in ways I could never have imagined as a young man." The employees listened in rapt attention, many of them seeing, truly seeing, a farmer for the first time. "My son built this company because he saw my struggles, the long hours, the physical toll, the uncertainty of each harvest. He wanted to make life better for people like me, and he has succeeded beyond my wildest dreams." Guo's eyes swept across the faces before him. "But machines, no matter how advanced, are only tools. It is the hands that use them that matter. It is the wisdom of generations that knows when to plant, when to harvest, how to read the sky and the soil. This wisdom cannot be replaced by technology. It must be enhanced by it." He paused, his gaze finding Zhao, who could barely meet his eyes. "When you look at a farmer and see only dirty hands, you miss seeing the hands that feed you. When you dismiss traditional knowledge as outdated, you cut yourself off from centuries of wisdom that no computer can replace." Guo turned to his son, pride evident in his expression. "My son understands this. That is why SunGrow has succeeded where others have failed. Its machines work because they are built with respect for the farmers who use them." He faced the crowd once more. "I do not seek special treatment. I do not want to be respected because I am the father of your CEO. I ask only that you remember why this company exists, to serve those who serve you, to help those who grow your food, to honor the work that makes all other work possible." A profound silence followed his words. Many employees looked thoughtful, some ashamed, others moved by the simple dignity of the old farmer's speech. Zhang stepped forward again, placing a hand on his father's shoulder. "Thank you, Father." He addressed the gathering one final time. "Let's get back to work with a renewed understanding of our purpose and our values." As the crowd dispersed, Zhang guided his father toward his private office, away from the curious eyes and whispered conversations. The revelation had sent shockwaves through the company that would be felt for months to come. Inside the quiet of Zhang's office, father and son sat across from each other, the day's events settling between them like dust after a storm. "I'm sorry. You had to experience that," Zhang said softly in their dialect. "I never imagined they would treat visitors so poorly." Guo shook his head. "Success changes people. It makes them forget where they came from. Even you, my son, must guard against this." Zhang nodded solemnly. "You're right. I've been so focused on growth and innovation that I've allowed the company's culture to drift from its foundations. That ends today." "The young man, Zhao," Guo said. "Do not be too harsh with him. His disrespect comes from ignorance, not true malice." Zhang smiled slightly. "Always compassionate even toward those who wrong you. But he needs this lesson, Father. 6 months in the fields will teach him what no reprimand from me ever could." Guo nodded in agreement. "The land is the greatest teacher. It humbles even the proudest heart." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the bond between them transcending words. Then Guo reached into his simple cloth bag and pulled out a small package wrapped in leaves. "I brought rice cakes," he said with a small smile. "Your favorite. Your mother made them this morning." Zhang's eyes softened at this simple gesture of parental love, so at odds with the corporate power he wielded, yet so much more meaningful. "Thank you, Father," he said, accepting the humble offering with the reverence it deserved, "for everything." 3 months had passed since the day Guo Wei had walked through the doors of Sungrow Agricultural Equipment. Autumn had arrived, painting the countryside in hues of gold and crimson as farmers across the region prepared for the harvest season. The changes at Sungrow had rippled outward like waves on a pond, touching every aspect of the company's operations and culture. On a crisp morning with clear blue skies, Guo made his way up the path to the factory once more. This time, there was no pretense, no anonymity. The security guard at the gate, a new one who had been hired after the previous guard had been reassigned, greeted him with a respectful bow. "Good morning, Chairman Guo," the guard said warmly. "Your son is waiting for you in the main conference room." Guo nodded his thanks, still somewhat uncomfortable with the title chairman that came with his new role heading the Farmers' Advisory Council. He had initially resisted, telling Zhang that he was just a simple farmer, not a businessman. But his son had been insistent. "That's exactly why you're perfect for this role, Father. We need your farmer's wisdom, not another businessman's ambition." As Guo walked through the lobby, he noticed how different everything felt. Employees smiled and greeted him respectfully, not with the forced deference born of fear, but with genuine warmth. Many of them had spent time working in the fields now, part of Zhang's new initiative, and they had returned with mud on their boots and a new perspective in their hearts. Lin, who had once rushed him through a 30-minute tour, now coordinated the company's visitor program with meticulous attention to respect and inclusion. She had personally apologized to Guo, her remorse genuine and her commitment to change sincere. Today, she approached him with a clipboard and a humble smile. "Good morning, Chairman Guo," she said, bowing slightly. "The council members have already arrived. May I escort you to the meeting?" "Thank you, Lin," Guo replied kindly. He had never been one to hold grudges. "How was your week in Yunnan with the tea farmers?" Lin's face lit up with unexpected enthusiasm. "It was eye-opening, sir. Their techniques for maintaining soil quality on the steep slopes are incredible. I've compiled a report for R&D about possible equipment adaptations that might help them." Guo nodded approvingly. The program was working exactly as Zhang had hoped, breaking down barriers between the corporate world and the farming communities they served. As they walked through the main production floor, Guo noticed Director Huang guiding a group of visitors, actual farmers in work clothes, their hands calloused and their faces weathered by the sun. Huang was speaking to them with genuine respect, explaining the manufacturing process and asking for their input on design features. "We've redesigned the handle based on feedback from farmers in Sichuan," Huang was saying. "They pointed out that the previous design caused strain during extended use. Your practical experience is invaluable to us." Catching sight of Guo, Huang bowed respectfully before continuing his tour. The transformation in the man was remarkable. From dismissive executive to attentive listener in the span of a few months. Lin led Guo to the large conference room where the Farmers' Advisory Council was gathered. Around the polished table sat 10 farmers from different regions of China, each bringing unique expertise in various crops and conditions. They were consulting on new product designs, testing prototypes, and ensuring that Sungrow's innovations actually solved real problems faced in the fields. Zhang rose as his father entered, a gesture of respect that set the tone for everyone present. "Father, welcome. We were just discussing the modifications to the rice harvester." Guo took his seat at the head of the table, still somewhat uncomfortable with the formality, but growing into his role. "The cutting height issue?" "Yes," replied one of the council members, an experienced rice farmer from Guangxi. "The engineers have made the adjustments you suggested. The prototype is ready for field testing. The meeting proceeded with a productive exchange of ideas between farmers and engineers. The farmers spoke with the confidence of experts, which they were, and the engineers listened with the humility of students, which they had become. It was exactly the partnership Zhang had envisioned when founding the company, technology and tradition working in harmony. After the council meeting, Zhang invited his father to join him for a special visit. "There's something I'd like you to see," he said with a small smile. They drove in Zhang's modest sedan. He had sold the luxury cars that had once filled his parking space, preferring simplicity now, to a village about an hour from the city. As they approached, Guo recognized the area, Longjing Village, known for its rich soil and excellent rice production. "Why are we visiting Longjing?" Guo asked, curious. Zhang's smile widened slightly. "Someone here has been learning some important lessons." They parked near the edge of a vast rice paddy where several farmers were working. Among them, knee-deep in the muddy water and clearly struggling with the physically demanding work, was a familiar figure, Zhao Liang, the marketing director, whose arrogance had earned him this 6-month reassignment. Zhao looked different now. His once perfectly styled hair was hidden under a wide straw hat. His designer clothes had been replaced by simple work clothes, stained with mud and sweat. His hands, once soft and manicured, were now calloused and tanned. But the most significant change was in his eyes. The arrogance had been replaced by something approaching humility. When Zhao spotted Zhang and Guo approaching, he waded out of the paddy and bowed deeply, showing none of his former disdain. "CEO, Zhang, Chairman Guo," he greeted them, his voice lacking its former sharp edge. "I wasn't expecting a visit today." "We wanted to see how you're adapting to farm life," Zhang replied neutrally. "It's been 3 months now." Zhao looked down at his mud-covered legs and smiled ruefully. "It's been educational, sir. Farmer Liu has been very patient with me, though I'm sure I've tested that patience many times." He gestured toward an elderly farmer who was watching them from the paddy with an amused expression. Liu waved back with a weathered hand. "And what have you learned, Mr. Zhao?" Guo asked gently. Zhao was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, there was a sincerity that hadn't been there before. "I've learned that I knew nothing," he admitted. "I spent years marketing agricultural equipment without understanding the first thing about the people who use it or the conditions they work in. I talked about efficiency and productivity as if they were just numbers on a spreadsheet, not the difference between a family eating or going hungry." He gestured toward the vast expanse of the rice paddy. "This work, it's art and science together. Farmer Liu knows things about this land that no textbook could teach me. He can predict rain by watching the dragonflies. He knows exactly when to harvest by the weight of the grain in his palm. I've been humbled every single day here." Guo nodded, satisfied by what he heard. The land had indeed been a good teacher. "And has this changed how you think about marketing our equipment?" Zhang asked. Zhao's face lit up with unexpected passion. "Completely, sir. I've been keeping notes, pages and pages of insights from the farmers here, things we never considered in our marketing because we didn't understand the daily reality of farming." He pulled a worn notebook from his pocket. "For example, we always emphasize speed and efficiency in our harvester advertisements. But the farmers here care more about reliability and ease of repair. A machine that breaks down during harvest season and can't be fixed quickly is useless, no matter how efficient it is normally." Zhang exchanged a pleased glance with his father. This was exactly the perspective shift he had hoped for. "When your reassignment ends, would you be interested in developing a new marketing approach based on these insights?" Zhang asked. Zhao looked surprised, then deeply grateful. "Yes, sir, I would be honored, but—" he hesitated. "I'd like to request permission to continue spending 1 week each month in the fields, even after I return to my marketing role. I don't want to forget these lessons." It was Guo who answered, his weathered face creasing into a smile. The best fertilizer for the field is the farmer's footsteps, Mr. Zhao. Your presence in the fields will continue to enrich both the land and your understanding. As they left Zhao to return to his work, Zhang and Guo walked along the edge of the paddy, enjoying the peaceful scene and each other's company. He has changed, Guo observed. Zhang nodded. The land changes everyone who approaches it with an open heart. It taught me humility when I was young, trying to build my first prototypes. It's teaching Zhao the same lesson now. They stopped at the top of a small hill overlooking the village. The late afternoon sun cast a golden light over the fields, the farmers appearing as small figures tending the land that had fed China for thousands of years. I worried, Guo admitted quietly, that your success might separate you from your roots. That Sungrow might become just another company, forgetting why it was founded. Zhang placed a hand on his father's shoulder. That day you visited the factory. It was a wake-up call for me as much as for everyone else. I had been so focused on growth and innovation that I'd allowed the company's heart to change. You reminded me of what matters. Guo smiled, proud of his son not for his wealth or success, but for his wisdom and willingness to learn and change. Your mother wants you to come for dinner on Sunday, Guo said, changing the subject. She's making your favorite dishes. Zhang's face lit up at the mention of home and family. I'll be there. No matter how busy things get at Sungrow, family comes first. You and Mother taught me that. As they walked back to the car, Guo reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the humble barn where Zhang had built his first prototype to the multinational corporation Sungrow had become, the path had been unexpected, but extraordinary. And through it all, the simple values of respect, humility, and family had proven more powerful than corporate titles or profit margins. The sun was setting as they drove back to the city, casting long shadows across the fields. Zhang glanced at his father, noticing how the golden light softened the deep lines on his weathered face, lines earned through decades of hard work and quiet wisdom. You know, Father, Zhang said softly, everything I've built, everything Sungrow, has become, it all began with you. Not just your barn or your tools, but your example. Your dignity, your respect for the land and everyone who works it. Guo shook his head slightly, uncomfortable with praise. I simply did what farmers have done for generations. You were the one with the vision to make things better. A vision built on your foundation, Zhang insisted. The most valuable lesson Sungrow learned these past months wasn't about marketing strategies or production efficiencies. It was about respect. Seeing the worth in every person, regardless of their appearance or position. As the Sungrow factory came into view on the horizon, its modern silhouette backlit by the setting sun, Guo felt a sense of peace. The company his son had built was finding its way back to its roots, remembering its purpose. And in that remembering, it was becoming stronger, more authentic, more aligned with the values that had inspired its creation. A tree with strong roots can weather any storm, Guo said quietly, an old proverb that seemed particularly fitting. Zhang smiled, recognizing his father's wisdom. And Sungrow's roots go deep into the soil you tilled all your life. We will never forget that again. As father and son drove toward the gleaming headquarters, the contrast between them remained. One a simple farmer with calloused hands and quiet dignity, the other a successful CEO with vision and influence. But the connection between them was stronger than any difference, a bond forged through respect, love, and shared values that no amount of success or status could ever break. In the end, it wasn't about who wore expensive clothes or who worked with their hands in the soil. It was about recognizing the value in every person, honoring their contributions, and treating them with the dignity they deserved. That was the lesson Guo Wei had taught Sungrow. not through speeches or mandates, but through the simple power of his presence and the quiet strength of his character. Sometimes the most profound teachers are not those who speak the loudest, but those who live their values most authentically. And sometimes the most valuable lessons come not from boardrooms or business schools, but from the humble wisdom of those whose hands have worked the earth, whose hearts understand the rhythms of nature, and whose lives exemplify the dignity of honest labor. This was Guo Wei's gift to his son's company, a reminder of who they were and why they existed. And in receiving that gift with humility and gratitude, Sun Guo had discovered a truth more valuable than any profit margin. True success is measured not by what you achieve, but by whether you remain true to your roots along the way. 1 year had passed since Guo Wei's fateful visit to Sun Guo Agricultural Equipment. The company had undergone a profound transformation that extended far beyond its walls, influencing the entire agricultural technology industry in China. On a bright spring morning, hundreds of people gathered on a vast green expanse outside the Sun Guo headquarters for the company's anniversary celebration. The crowd was a striking blend of corporate executives in business attire and farmers in work clothes, mingling together without the barriers that once separated them. At the center of the gathering was a simple wooden platform where Jiang Min stood alongside his father. Behind them was a canvas-covered structure waiting to be unveiled. The contrast between father and son remained. Zhang in his simple but elegant suit, Guo in his clean but modest farmer's clothes, yet they stood together with equal dignity. "Welcome, everyone," Zhang began, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. 1 year ago, Sun Guo rediscovered its soul. Today, we celebrate not just what we've accomplished since then, but the wisdom that guided us back to our true purpose. He gestured toward the gathering. Look around you. Farmers and executives, engineers and field workers, all gathered as equals. This is the true face of Sun Guo, not a company that creates technology for farmers, but a partnership between those who know the land and those who create the tools to tend it. The crowd applauded warmly. Among them stood Lin, now the Director of Community Engagement, and Wei, who headed the Farmer Exchange Program. Director Huang stood with a group of farmers he had come to respect deeply over the past year. And near the front, Zhao Liang, now back in his marketing role but forever changed by his months in the fields, watched with genuine appreciation. The transformation we've undergone wasn't a corporate initiative or a marketing strategy, Zhang continued. It began with a simple farmer being treated with disrespect in the very company his son had built to honor farmers. He turned to Guo, his expression softening with filial respect. My father taught me many things throughout my life, but perhaps the most important lesson came 1 year ago, when he showed me through his quiet dignity that we had lost our way. Zhang gestured toward the covered structure behind them. Today, we unveil something that will serve as a permanent reminder of that lesson. At his signal, the canvas fell away to reveal a beautiful bronze sculpture. It depicted a farmer's hands, weathered, strong, and dignified, holding a handful of soil from which sprouted the Sun Guo logo. The craftsmanship was exquisite, capturing every line and callus of a farmer's hands with perfect detail. These hands, Zhang said solemnly, represent every farmer who has ever tended the land. They are the hands that feed us, that nurture the soil, that carry the wisdom of generations. And they are the foundation upon which Sun Guo stands. He turned to his father. Would you like to say a few words, father? Guo hesitated, unaccustomed to public speaking, but there was something important he wanted to share. He stepped forward, his weathered face solemn but his eyes bright with wisdom. I am just a simple farmer, he began, his voice steady despite his lack of formal education. I have spent my life working the land, feeling the soil between my fingers, watching seeds become food that nourishes our people. The crowd listened in respectful silence, executives and farmers alike hanging on his words. When my son was young, he asked me why I continued to farm when the work was so hard and the rewards so uncertain. I told him something my father told me. We farm not just to feed our bodies, but to remember who we are. Guo gestured toward the sculpture of the farmer's hands. These hands are not just tools for work. They connect us to the earth, to our ancestors, to the cycle of seasons that has sustained humanity since the beginning. When we forget to respect these hands, when we see them as crude or primitive, we forget our own origins. His gaze swept across the gathered executives. Your fine clothes and advanced degrees are worthy of respect. But they exist because these hands, he held up his own calloused hands, grew the food that nourished you through your studies. They exist because generations of farmers provided the foundation upon which all other professions are built. Then he turned to the farmers in the crowd. And we must also respect the knowledge and innovation that companies like SunGrow bring to our fields. The machines my son creates make our work easier, our harvests more abundant. There is wisdom in embracing progress while honoring tradition. Guo looked at his son with quiet pride. My son built this company because he saw the dignity in farming and wanted to honor it. For a time, that vision became clouded. But now, SunGrow remembers its purpose, not just to make profits, but to serve those who serve us all. As Guo stepped back, the applause was thunderous, a genuine outpouring of respect from everyone present. Zhang embraced his father briefly, before turning back to the microphone. My father's wisdom has guided not just our family, but our entire company, Zhang said. And today, I'm proud to announce several initiatives that will ensure we never lose sight of our purpose again. He outlined the changes that had been implemented over the past year and the new programs being launched. The Farmers' Advisory Council, chaired by Guo Wei, had reviewed and improved every product in the SunGrow line, making them more practical and reliable for real-world farming conditions. The Field Experience program had sent over 500 SunGrow employees to work alongside farmers, creating a deeper understanding of agricultural challenges and fostering mutual respect. The Rural Innovation Fund had provided grants to farmers with ideas for improving agricultural methods, acknowledging that innovation could come from the fields as well as the engineering labs. The Education Partnership had established scholarships for the children of farming families, creating pathways for the next generation to bridge traditional knowledge and modern technology. These initiatives are not charity, Zhang emphasized. They are investments in our shared future. By honoring the wisdom of traditional farming while embracing the possibilities of technology, we create something stronger than either could be alone. After the ceremony, the gathering transitioned into a festive atmosphere. Long tables had been set up on the grounds, where executives and farmers sat side by side, sharing food and conversation. The artificial barriers that once separated them, education, wealth, status, had been replaced by genuine curiosity and respect. Zhao Liang, the once arrogant marketing director, sat with Farmer Liu from Longjing village, the two men now unlikely friends. After Zhao's transformative months working in the rice paddies, they were deep in conversation about a new marketing campaign that would highlight the partnership between farmers and technology. The advertisements shouldn't show the machines as replacements for farmers, Zhao was saying. They should show them as extensions of the farmer's wisdom, tools that amplify what farmers already know. Liu nodded approvingly. Yes, and perhaps show real farmers using them. Not actors with clean hands, but people like me, with dirt under our fingernails and knowledge in our hearts. Nearby, Director Huang was listening intently as a group of farmers from Yunnan described the challenges of cultivating crops on steep mountain terraces. He was taking notes, already thinking about how Sungrow's engineering team could develop equipment specifically suited to mountainous regions. Lin moved through the gathering, making sure everyone felt welcome and included. She stopped to chat with Guo, who was sitting at a table with several other elderly farmers. "Chairman Guo," she said with genuine respect, "the event is a great success. Thank you for all you've done to transform our company." Guo shook his head, modestly. "I did very little. It was the wisdom already within Sungrow that needed to be remembered, not something new that needed to be created." Lin smiled, understanding the profound truth in his humble words. "Still, your presence here has changed everything. You've taught us to see value where we once saw only, well, just farmers." "There is no just about being a farmer," Guo replied, gently. "It is one of humanity's oldest and most essential callings. When we forget that, we forget who we are." As the celebration continued, Zhang found a quiet moment to sit with his father under the shade of a tree overlooking the gathering. They watched in companionable silence as executives who had once dismissed farmers now engaged with them as respected equals. "You've changed Sungrow, father," Zhang said finally, "not just through your position on the advisory council, but through your example. Your dignity in the face of disrespect taught a lesson no corporate training program ever could." Guo smiled slightly. "I merely reminded people of what they already knew but had forgotten. Everyone comes from the land. Eventually, our ancestors all work the soil, whether we remember them or not." Zhang nodded thoughtfully. "The company's profits have increased by 15% this year, you know. It turns out that making equipment that truly serves farmers' needs is good business. When we listen to the people who actually use our machines, we make better machines. Wisdom and profit need not be enemies," Guo observed. "The wisest path is often the most successful if we have the patience to follow it." They sat in silence. Again, watching as Zhao approached Farmer Liu's teenage daughter, who had developed an innovative irrigation system for her family's fields. Zhao was listening intently as the girl explained her idea, treating her with the same respect he would show a university professor. "That," Guo said, pointing to the interaction, "is the true success of Sungrow. Not the profits or the awards, but the respect flowing in both directions. The farmer's daughter being heard, the executive learning to listen." Zhang nodded in agreement. 1 year ago, that same executive would have dismissed her without a thought. Now, he recognizes that wisdom can come from unexpected sources. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the gathering, Zhang looked at his father. This simple farmer whose quiet dignity had transformed a multinational corporation. "Will you come visit the factory again next week?" Zhang asked. "The engineers want your input on the new rice planter design." Guo nodded, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Yes, but this time, perhaps I will use the front entrance." They both laughed, the shared joke a reminder of how far they had come. The disrespect Guo had faced 1 year ago had been transformed into something powerful and positive, a company renewed, relationships restored, and a deeper understanding of the true meaning of respect. As they walked back toward the celebration, an elderly farmer approached them, his face weathered by decades under the sun. He bowed slightly to Guo. "Your son's company has changed our lives," the farmer said simply. "But more importantly, you have reminded them who they serve. Thank you for standing tall when they looked down on you." Guo clasped the man's hand. One farmer to another equals in dignity if not in circumstance. No words were needed between them. They understood the value of the land, the importance of the harvest, the dignity of feeding a nation. And in that moment of connection between two humble farmers, surrounded by the company that now honored their wisdom, the final lesson was clear. True respect sees the value in every person, regardless of their status or appearance. It recognizes that wisdom comes in many forms, from university laboratories and corporate boardrooms, yes, but also from the calloused hands and weathered faces of those who tend the earth. That was the legacy Guo Wei had created at Sungrow, not through power or position, but through the quiet dignity that had been his strength all along. And it was a legacy that would continue to bear fruit, season after season, in the renewed company his son had built, and in the hearts of all who learned its lesson. 5 years had passed since Guo Wei's transformative visit to Sungrow agricultural equipment. What had begun as a single day of observation had blossomed into a movement that extended far beyond the company's walls, influencing the entire agricultural technology industry across Asia. On a warm summer evening, a special gathering was taking place at Guo's family farm, the very same modest property where Jiang Min had built his first prototype in the barn decades ago. The small farmhouse was surrounded by flourishing fields, a testament to generations of careful stewardship of the land. But today, the farm hosted distinguished visitors from across China and beyond. Government officials in crisp suits mingled with farmers in work clothes. Corporate executives chatted with agricultural researchers. Young engineering students listened attentively to elderly farmers sharing traditional knowledge. All had come to celebrate the launch of a book that had captured the attention of business schools and farming communities alike. Hands That Feed, the Sungrow Story. The book chronicled the journey of Sungrow from its humble beginnings in Guo's barn to its transformation after his fateful visit 5 years ago. But more than that, it explored the philosophy that had emerged from that experience, a business approach that placed respect for farmers at its center and recognized that true innovation came from combining modern technology with traditional wisdom. Under a canopy of lanterns strung between ancient trees, Jiang stood before the assembled guests, his father by his side. At 78, Guo was frailer now, his once strong frame slightly stooped with age, but his eyes remained clear and bright with the same quiet wisdom that had changed Sungrow's course. "Welcome to where it all began," Jiang said, gesturing to the modest farm around them. "This land has been in our family for generations. It was here that my father taught me the value of honest work. It was here that I built my first rice transplanter in our barn, with parts salvaged from broken machines and metal my father had saved for years to buy." He pointed to the old barn, now preserved as a reminder of Sungrow's origins. Inside, visitors could see the workbench where young Jiang had labored night after night, and the tools his father had provided at great personal sacrifice. "But the most valuable thing my father gave me wasn't this land or those tools," Jiang continued. "It was a lesson in dignity, a lesson that would take me decades to fully understand." Jiang turned to look at his father with profound respect. 5 years ago, when my father walked into Sungrow as an anonymous visitor and faced disrespect from people who didn't recognize him, he taught our entire company a lesson more valuable than any business strategy or marketing plan. He showed us that true respect sees the worth in every person, regardless of their appearance or position. The gathered crowd nodded in appreciation, many having heard the now famous story of how the humble farmer had transformed a multinational corporation through nothing but his quiet dignity. "The book we launched today isn't just the story of Sungrow," Jiang explained. "It's a blueprint for a new kind of business relationship between technology companies and the communities they serve. It's about remembering that no matter how advanced our machines become, they exist to serve human needs, human wisdom, and human dignity." Copies of the book were displayed on a table nearby. The cover featured a striking image, a close-up photograph of Guo's weathered hands holding rich soil, with a small green seedling sprouting from it. The image perfectly captured the philosophy at the heart of the Sungrow transformation, that all innovation must be rooted in respect for those who work the land. Among the guests was Zhao Liang, now Sungrow's chief community officer. The transformation in the once arrogant marketing director was so complete that new employees could scarcely believe the stories of his former attitude. After his 6 months working in the rice fields of Longjing village, Zhao had continued to spend 1 week each month working alongside farmers. Those experiences had not only humbled him, but had given him insights that made him extraordinarily effective in his role-building relationships between Sungrow and farming communities. The most valuable marketing research I've ever conducted was planting rice alongside Farmer Liu, Zhao often said. No focus group or market survey could ever replace the wisdom gained by sharing someone's daily work. Now Zhao approached Guo, bowing deeply in genuine respect. Chairman Guo, your family's story has inspired so many of us. The lessons you taught have spread far beyond Sungrow. Indeed they had. The respect the hands that feed approach pioneered by Sungrow had become a case study at business schools across Asia. Other agricultural technology companies had adopted similar practices, sending their engineers and executives to work in the fields alongside farmers. The artificial barriers between those who designed the tools and those who used them were breaking down across the industry. Guo nodded modestly at Zhao's words. I taught nothing that wasn't already known, he replied, his voice softer with age, but still carrying the same quiet authority. I simply reminded people of what they had forgotten. In the 5 years since Guo's visit to Sungrow, the company had flourished beyond all expectations. Profits had increased consistently year after year, but more importantly, its products had genuinely improved the lives of farming communities. By listening to the people who actually used their machines, Sungrow's engineers had created tools that addressed real needs rather than perceived ones. The Farmers' Advisory Council, still chaired by Guo despite his advancing age, had expanded to include representatives from different regions and agricultural specialties. No product reached the market without their approval, ensuring that Sungrow's innovations were truly useful in the field. The Field Experience Program had become a core part of Sungrow's corporate culture. Every employee, from entry-level staff to senior executives, spent time working alongside farmers each year. These experiences had transformed the company from within, creating a workforce that genuinely understood and respected the communities they served. As the evening progressed, Zhang invited several guests to share their reflections on the Sungrow transformation. Director Huang, now the company's chief ethics officer, spoke of how his perspective had changed after working in the fields. I used to see farmers as simple people who needed our superior technology, he admitted candidly. Now I understand that they are the true experts, with generations of knowledge that no university degree can provide. Our technology is valuable only when it complements their wisdom, not when it tries to replace it. Lin, who had risen to become Sungrow's Director of Global Community Relations, shared stories of how the company's approach had been received in different countries. The respect for farmers that began here on this small farm has resonated across cultures, she explained. From rice paddies in Thailand to wheat fields in Kazakhstan, the principle remains the same. Honor the hands that feed us. As darkness fell, lanterns illuminated the gathering with a warm glow. Zhang invited his father to address the guests. Guo initially demurred, never one to seek the spotlight, but the assembled crowd's enthusiastic encouragement convinced him. With Zhang's supportive hand on his arm, Guo stood before the gathering. Despite his age and the slight tremor in his hands, he stood tall, his dignity undiminished by time. I am just a farmer, he began, as he always did. My hands have worked this soil for more than 70 years. These hands are not special. They are like the hands of millions of farmers across our nation and around the world. He looked down at his hands, the skin thin now with age, but still bearing the marks of a lifetime of labor. When I was a young man, these hands were strong. They could work from sunrise to sunset without rest. Now they are weaker, but perhaps a little wiser. A smile touched his weathered face. 5 years ago, when I walked into my son's factory, some people saw these hands and thought they had nothing to offer. They saw an old farmer, not worth their time or respect. They couldn't see that these hands carried decades of knowledge about the very thing their company was built to serve. The crowd listened in respectful silence, many nodding in recognition of the truth in his words. The lesson of Sun-Gro is not about me, Guo continued. It is about seeing value where others might miss it. It is about remembering that wisdom comes in many forms, not all of them with degrees or titles. It is about honoring the hands that feed us all, whether they belong to farmers, factory workers, or those who design the machines that help us grow more food with less labor. He gestured toward the fields surrounding them, where rice plants swayed gently in the evening breeze. This land has taught my family for generations. It has taught us patience, humility, and respect for forces greater than ourselves. My son took those lessons and built something remarkable with them. Guo turned to Zhang, his eyes filled with quiet pride. The true success of Sun-Gro is not measured in yuan or in machines sold. It is measured in lives improved, in wisdom honored, in dignity preserved. As Guo concluded his remarks, the applause was warm and genuine. Many in the audience had tears in their eyes, moved by the simple eloquence of the elderly farmer's words. The evening continued with a traditional meal served at long tables set up in the farmyard. The dishes featured rice grown in Guo's fields and vegetables from his garden, prepared according to family recipes passed down through generations. Corporate executives and government officials ate the same simple but delicious food as the farmers, an edible reminder of the connections between them all. As the celebration wound down, a young engineering student approached Guo, notebook in, and she was part of Sun-Gro's scholarship program, which supported the education of young people from farming families. "Chairman Guo," she said respectfully, "your story has inspired me to create technology that truly serves farming communities. May I ask what advice you would give to someone like me, trying to bridge traditional farming knowledge with modern innovation?" Guo considered the question carefully. "Walk the fields before you design for them," he said finally. "Feel the soil in your hands. Listen more than you speak. Remember that the newest idea is not always the best idea, and the oldest practice is not always outdated. Seek the wisdom in both, and you will create tools that truly serve." The student wrote his words carefully in her notebook, recognizing their value. As the guests departed, thanking Guo and Zhang for their hospitality, father and son found themselves alone on the small porch of the farmhouse. They sat in comfortable silence, looking out over the fields that had sustained their family for generations. "The book will help others understand what we learned," Zhang said finally. "But the real story isn't on those pages. It's here, in this land, in our family's journey." Guo nodded. "Every grain of rice has a story to tell if we have the patience to listen. Sun-Gro learned to listen, and that has made all the difference." As the moon rose over the fields, casting a silver light across the landscape, the contrast between the modest farmhouse and the multinational corporation that had grown from it seemed both striking and natural. Sun-Gro's journey from a farmer's barn to a global leader in agricultural technology was extraordinary, but its return to its roots, its rediscovery of respect for the hands that feed us all, was perhaps the most remarkable chapter in its story. In the quiet of the evening, with his son beside him and the land he had tended all his life spreading out before him, Guo Wei felt a deep sense of contentment. The disrespect he had faced that day in the factory had been transformed into something powerful and positive, a legacy of dignity that would continue long after he was gone. And in that peaceful moment, the final truth of the story became clear. The most profound changes often begin with the simplest acts of dignity in the face of disrespect, with the quiet courage to stand tall when others look down, and with the wisdom to see value in every person, regardless of the clothes they wear or the work their hands perform. 10 years had passed since Guo Wei's fateful visit to Hangzhou agricultural equipment. What began as a simple inspection had transformed not just a company, but sparked a movement across industries throughout China and beyond. On this crisp autumn morning, a significant ceremony was taking place at the Hangzhou headquarters. The campus had changed dramatically over the decade. What was once a sterile corporate environment now harmoniously blended modern architecture with traditional agricultural elements. Rice paddies and demonstration fields surrounded the buildings. Walking paths wound through vegetable gardens maintained by employees. The cold, imposing glass facade had been redesigned to incorporate warm wood elements harvested sustainably from managed forests. Today, hundreds had gathered for a solemn but meaningful occasion. Zhang Min, now in his 60s with distinguished silver at his temples, stood before the crowd. His face showed the weight of recent events, but also a profound sense of purpose. 1 month ago, Zhang began, his voice steady despite his grief. My father, Guo Wei, returned to the earth he tended all his life. He passed peacefully, surrounded by family, on the farm where I was born, and where he taught me everything that truly matters. The crowd lowered their heads in respect. Many had personal stories of how the humble farmer had influenced their lives and work. Today, we gather not to mourn, though our hearts are heavy with loss, but to honor his legacy by dedicating this space to the principles he embodied. Zhang gestured to the building behind him, the newly constructed Guo Wei Center for Agricultural Wisdom and Innovation. Unlike the gleaming corporate architecture that once defined Hangzhou, this building harmonized with the landscape. Its design incorporated elements of traditional farm structures while utilizing cutting-edge sustainable technology. This center represents everything my father stood for, the perfect balance between honoring traditional wisdom and embracing beneficial innovation. It will serve as a meeting place where farmers and engineers, students and elders, tradition and technology can come together in mutual respect. The building housed research laboratories where scientists worked alongside experienced farmers to develop new agricultural solutions. It included classrooms where farming techniques passed down through generations, were documented and taught alongside modern scientific principles. And at its heart was a simple museum dedicated to the story that had changed Hangzhou, the day a humble farmer walked into his son's factory and transformed it through nothing but his quiet dignity. Among the distinguished guests was Premier Li, who had come to recognize the profound impact of the respect the hands that feed philosophy that had spread from Hangzhou to influence national agricultural policy. What had begun as one company's transformation had developed into a movement that was revitalizing rural communities and bridging the divide between China's agricultural heritage and its technological future. 10 years ago, Zhang continued, my father walked through the doors of Hangzhou as an anonymous visitor. He was judged by his appearance, dismissed because of his simple clothes and calloused hands. What those who disrespected him couldn't see was the wisdom, dignity, and strength those hands represented. Zhang's gaze swept across the assembled crowd, which included many Hangzhou employees who had been present that day, some who had shown disrespect, others who had witnessed it. All had been transformed by what followed. The story of that visit has been told many times. It has become a case study at business schools, a mandatory training module for our employees, and even the subject of a documentary film. But the true meaning of that day goes beyond a simple lesson in customer service or respect. Zhang paused, looking up at the building that now bore his father's name. What my father taught us was that true innovation never comes from dismissing the past or disrespecting those who preserve traditional knowledge. It comes from honoring that wisdom while thoughtfully embracing progress. In the front row sat several familiar faces. Zhao Liang, his hair now grey but his eyes bright with purpose, had risen to become Sungrow's CEO after Zhang stepped into the role of chairman 5 years earlier. The former marketing director, who had once mockingly suggested Guo use the service entrance, had become the most passionate advocate for the company's farmer-first philosophy. Beside him sat Director Huang, now retired but still serving as an advisor to the Farmers' Advisory Council. The transformation in him had been profound. From a man who saw farmers as beneath his notice to someone who spent his retirement traveling to rural villages, documenting traditional farming techniques that might otherwise be lost to time. Lin, now Sungrow's Global Outreach Director, had tear stains on her cheeks as she listened to Zhang speak. She had developed a close relationship with Guo over the years, often seeking his advice on how to ensure the company's international expansion remained true to its core values. Today, we don't just dedicate a building, Zhang continued. We recommit ourselves to the principles my father embodied. Humility in the face of nature's wisdom. Respect for every person, regardless of their status or appearance. Recognition that the most weathered hands often carry the deepest knowledge. He gestured toward a simple stone sculpture at the entrance to the center. It depicted Guo's hands, the same weathered, dignified hands from the bronze sculpture unveiled years ago, now rendered in granite, holding soil from which sprouted real plants that would change with the seasons. These hands will continue to teach us, even though my father has returned to the earth. They remind us that every innovation must be rooted in respect for those who came before us and those who will come after. As Zhang concluded his remarks, he invited Farmer Liu from Longjing village, now in his 80s and one of Guo's oldest friends, to join him in cutting the ribbon to officially open the center. The elderly farmer, whose own hands bore the same marks of a lifetime of labor as Guo's had, stood proud beside the successful businessman. Together, they represented the bridge Sungrow had built between tradition and innovation, between the wisdom of the past and the possibilities of the future. After the ceremony, guests toured the new facility. Its central atrium featured a timeline, chronicling Sungrow's journey, from Zhang's first prototype built in his father's barn to the global enterprise it had become. Prominently displayed was a section dedicated to the visit that changed everything, featuring photographs and artifacts from that pivotal day 10 years ago. Among the items was the visitor badge Guo had worn, the simple cloth bag he had carried, and a worn notebook containing his observations from that day, observations that had never been shared until after his passing. The notebook revealed Guo's thoughts as he experienced the disrespect at the factory. Not anger or resentment, but concern that the company his son had built to help farmers had lost sight of its purpose. One page in particular had been enlarged and displayed prominently. In Guo's careful handwriting were words that had become Sungrow's unofficial motto: "The finest technology is worthless without respect for those who use it. The most advanced machine cannot replace the wisdom of hands that have worked the soil for generations. Progress without respect is not progress at all." In a quiet corner of the museum, away from the main crowd, Zhang found himself standing alone, looking at a simple photograph of his father, standing in their fields, his face weathered by decades under the sun, but his eyes bright with quiet dignity. It had been taken just a year before his passing, when Guo was still able to tend his beloved land despite his advancing age. "Your father was a remarkable man," said a voice beside him. Zhang turned to find Premier Li had joined him, also gazing at the photograph. "He never thought of himself that way," Zhang replied. "He always said he was just a farmer. Nothing more, nothing less." The Premier nodded thoughtfully. "And yet, his impact extends far beyond this company. The agricultural reforms his story inspired have revitalized rural communities across the nation. Farmers who were once ignored are now respected partners in our technological advancement." Zhang smiled slightly, knowing his father would have been uncomfortable with such praise. He never sought to change the world. He simply stood tall in his dignity, even when others looked down on him. "Sometimes," Premier Li observed, "that is exactly how the world changes. Not through grand gestures or revolutionary ideas, but through one person refusing to compromise their dignity, even in the face of disrespect." As the day's events concluded, Zhang took a private moment to visit a special place on the Hangzhou campus, a small traditional garden hidden away from the main buildings. At its center stood an ancient ginkgo tree, planted on the day Hangzhou broke ground on its headquarters decades ago. Beneath it was a simple stone bench where Guo had often sat during his regular visits to the company in his later years. Zhang sat on the bench, feeling closer to his father in this peaceful spot. From a pocket, he withdrew a small cloth bag identical to the one Guo had carried that fateful day. Opening it, he removed a handful of soil, earth from their family farm, from the fields his father had tended all his life. Carefully, Zhang sprinkled the soil around the base of the ginkgo tree, a symbolic joining of the company's heart with its roots. As he did so, a gentle breeze rustled the golden leaves overhead, as if his father's spirit acknowledged the gesture. "Your lessons continue, Father," Zhang said softly to the wind. "Your wisdom lives on in every field we help cultivate, in every farmer whose work is made easier by our tools, in every person who learns to see the dignity in those society too often overlooks." As Zhang left the garden, he passed a group of new Hangzhou employees on their orientation tour. They were being led by Wei, now the company's director of new employee integration. As part of their first day, every new hire heard the story of Guo Wei's visit and spent time working in the demonstration fields on campus, feeling the soil between their fingers before they ever touched a computer or entered a meeting room. "Remember," Wei was telling them, "at Hangzhou, we believe that to create tools that truly serve farmers, we must first respect their wisdom. Every innovation begins with listening, every advancement with humility." Zhang smiled as he walked past, knowing that his father's legacy was secure, not just in the building that bore his name or the policies the company had adopted, but in the hearts and minds of each person who learned his story and carried its lesson forward. The sun was setting as Zhang prepared to leave for the day, casting a golden light across the Hangzhou campus. From his office window, he could see the fields surrounding the buildings, real working fields, where the company tested its equipment in actual farming conditions. In the distance, farmers were finishing their day's work, their silhouettes dignified against the setting sun. On Zhang's desk sat a framed photograph, not of corporate awards or business achievements, but of his father standing proudly beside the first rice transplanter prototype they had built together in their barn. Beside it was a small glass jar containing soil from their family farm, a daily reminder of where Hangzhou had come from and who it existed to serve. As Zhang gathered his things to head home, his phone chimed with a message. It was from his son, Jun, who had recently joined the company after completing his agricultural engineering degree. The message contained a photo of Jun in one of the test fields with several farmers, all smiling as they examined a new harvest tool. Grandfather would be proud, the message read. The farmers had some suggestions for improvements. They were right. The tool works better their way. Zhang smiled, a bittersweet mixture of grief and pride filling his heart. The wisdom of the humble farmer lived on, not just in the policies of a multinational corporation or the name on a building, but in the actions of a new generation who understood that true respect sees the value in every person, regardless of their appearance or status. As he left the building, Zhang paused at the bronze sculpture of his father's hands that had stood in the lobby for a decade. So many people had touched those metal hands for good luck or inspiration that certain spots had been polished to a bright shine by thousands of respectful touches. "The journey continues, Father," Zhang whispered. "Your lessons will never be forgotten." And somewhere in fields beyond mortal understanding, a humble farmer with weathered hands and quiet dignity nodded in approval, knowing that his greatest harvest had not been rice or wheat, but the seeds of respect he had planted in human hearts, seeds that would continue to grow and flourish for generations to come. If you believe that respect and humility are worth more than appearances, share this story with others. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful lessons that change the way we see the world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.